What is up, fellow nerds, and welcome back to the Dapper Snapper Gaming channel, and welcome back to How Do I Want to Do This? This is our series where we take a look at all playable options available to players in Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition, then we rank them on a scale of 1 to 10, and either build them or fix them depending on how they rank. Now, today we begin a new chapter in our series as we begin talking about the Paladin. I am super excited to be talking about this. I know that this is a lot of people's favorite class out there. Just by sheer damage numbers, by sheer versatility, that kind of thing. But how does it stack up against the other classes that we have talked about so far? And how will it stack up against the ones that we are yet to talk about? Well, that is what we are going to find out today. But before we do, make sure to leave a like on the video and subscribe if you haven't already. As you can see, most people who watch the channel are not subscribed. So please don't be one of those people. Help us reach our goal of 5,000 by the end of this year. I think we can do it, but I need your help in order to get there. And of course, make sure that you click the bell so you're notified when new videos are uploaded, and share the video with your friends. Of course, also please consider joining the channel. Every week I take a subclass and I rank it on a scale of 1 to 10, and then I either build it or fix it depending on the ranking. And of course, I then post those for each of my members. And so by joining at the bronze level, you can get access to all of my subclass fixes and my build guides. And so that is there for you as well. As you get to higher tiers, you will eventually get a shout out. You'll get the videos early. And like what we talked about in our variety build last week with the ultimate sniper, you can actually get priority picks of those builds as well. So there are a lot of great perks. Thank you all so much to my members. So the Paladin is one of those classic archetypes when it comes to high fantasy that you really can't have a game like this without it, right? That worshiper of some kind of deity, but also when things get rough, pulls out a sword and absolutely smites people like there's no tomorrow. I think that that's just something you have to have in anything like this, and I think D&D does it pretty well. Does it do it better than what other classes do? We're just gonna have to find that out today. Of course, this ranking is on an imperfect system. We're not gonna be talking about any subclasses today, but throughout the following weeks, we will be covering every subclass. And in addition, we will also be talking about the Open Sea Paladin, which comes to us from Matt Mercer. We do all of the Matt Mercer content as part of this series as well. And once we wrap up this series, I probably will go back through this and look at some popular homebrew type of stuff and make videos on that as well. But for this week, we are not talking about subclasses. We are just talking about the base class. And so, yeah, the ranking's a little wonky, but it'll be just fine. So let's start off by talking about our proficiencies, saving throws, equipment, all that good stuff. For our hit dice, we have a 1d10 hit die, which is the second best in the game. Basically, it's the best as long as you're not a barbarian, so it's really, really nice there. As far as armor proficiency goes, we get all armor and shields, so that's pretty much perfect. We get both simple and martial weapons, which is fantastic. We don't get any tool proficiencies, but honestly, like what I've said on the channel before, it really doesn't make a huge difference because tools aren't really all that great in D&D, so that really doesn't take away all that much. We get wisdom and charisma saving throws, which isn't terrible. Obviously, with every character, you get one good and one bad. So wisdom is one of the good ones and charisma is one of the not so good ones. But honestly, getting wisdom here is pretty fantastic because that is going to be targeted a lot. And so having a good wisdom saving throw is going to be helpful. So overall, those are actually pretty nice. And then, of course, we get 2 skills from a pretty short list. The list is fine. I don't think anything is really, really bad on this list. I would have liked to have seen some more of your higher tier type of stuff, your perceptions, your things like that. Of course, stealth isn't going to be on here, but still something else on here would have been really cool. So overall, looking at this kit, it's actually pretty good, right? We have a D10 hit die, which is pretty great actually. We're not a barbarian, so this is really the best that we can ask for. We get all armor, we get shields, we get pretty much any weapon that we could want. We don't get tools, and so basically the saving throws are pretty much as good as they can get. I mean, dex saves don't really make much sense here, just because you're going to be wearing armor most of the time, so that doesn't really make a lot of sense. If we had Constitution saving throws, this would just go over the edge, honestly. If we had Constitution and Charisma, this would be insane. But overall, it's still really, really nice. So overall, for our proficiencies, for all this stuff, I've got to give this a 9 out of 10. It is dang near perfect. I really, really like it, and I think it's off to a really good start. All right, let's start looking at each of our features here. Starting off, we get Divine Sense at level 1. So with this, we can open up our senses to try to see different types of creatures that are around us. So when we do this, until the end of our next turn, we can know the location of any celestial, fiend, or undead that is within 60 feet of us and not behind total cover. We will be able to figure out what type it is, celestial, fiend, or undead, but we don't necessarily know of a specific fiend, undead, celestial, anything like that. So the example they give is Strahd von Zarevich. It would not necessarily tell you that Strahd is the one that you can see. Just says there is an undead around you. Within the 60-foot radius, you can also tell if any place or object has been either consecrated or desecrated with the Hallow spell. We can use this a number of times per day, equal to 1 plus our charisma modifier, and we get back all of our uses on a long rest. Now, on paper, this sounds pretty awesome, and honestly, it's not bad. The behind total cover restriction is a little bit tough because that means that essentially they have to be within line of sight of you. However, it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to be able to see them. So if you are a race that does not have dark vision, but it is within 60 feet of you and you can't necessarily see it, you can still know that it's there, which is an interesting interaction that I'm sure has come up plenty of times. So this is definitely not a useless feature by any means. I know it sounds a little cheesy, but honestly, it's not too bad. We also have seen uses for this, I believe, in Critical Role, where there was a stack of bodies in a temple of some sort. I'm not remembering exactly what happened, but with it, we found out that some of the corpses were undead and some of them were not. And so this could also play into that, right? This could tell you which ones to target and which ones to leave alone, or if there is danger at all. So this definitely is not useless. It definitely can come into play. And the fact that it's celestials, fiends, and undead, all of that works. And it also, as far as we can tell, will get around anything that's invisible as well. Just has to be there. So I think that's pretty awesome. I think it can really, really help you out in some really cool situations. And so for that, I'm going to give this an 8 out of 10. It's not too bad. It can definitely help you out if you can't see something, whether by it being invisible or with dark vision. Any of those things can really help you out. Also at first level, we get Lay on Hands. And so with this, you can actually heal people from a pool of hit points that you get to choose from. So with this, we have a pool of hit points equal to 5 times our Paladin level. So of course, every time we take a level in Paladin, we get more and more of this. So it scales pretty nicely. As an action, we can touch a creature, including ourselves if we want to, and draw power from it and restore a number of hit points up to the maximum we have left in the pool. We could also spend 5 of those hit points and heal 1 disease or poison that is affecting that creature. We can, of course, cure multiple diseases if we want to, but of course you have to use 5 hit points per disease or poison. And then of course finally it says that this has no effect on undead or constructs. This feature is amazing, right? This is a free heal you get every day. You don't have to use a spell slot on it. It scales really nicely. Of course, 5 times your Paladin level, right? That's going to be 100 hit points by the time you are level 20. And of course, it scales really well from there. Being able to get rid of disease and poison can also be really handy, but I would imagine most of the time this is going to be used to either heal yourself or maybe an enemy that has fallen down. Because what's great about this is that you can split it up, right? So if someone is on 0 HP, falls down, you just use one. Use one of them and then pop them back up, right? They go down again, use one, pop them back up. You can do that as many times as you have hit points, which is going to far outnumber what spell slots pretty much any of your other people can do. And that really goes into how healing really works in D&D, right? If you use, say, Healing Word on someone and get them up to, say, 7 or 8 HP, they then take 10, they're back down again. If they had just the 1, they would be down again anyway. And so healing them all that extra didn't actually make a difference. The only time it's going to make a difference is if they take a massive hit that, of course, takes them in the negative, their max HP number. So ultimately, this is the ultimate get somebody up from 0 feature. And for that, it's getting a 10 out of 10. Lay on Hands is absolutely fantastic for its versatility, for its ability to get your friends up, and its ability to also heal diseases should it need to. It's just an absolutely fantastic feature. At level 2, we get a fighting style, and we actually have a unique option on here as well as some of the other standard ones, which we have talked about in the past. So with this, we get the following options here. We get Blessed Warrior, which is a unique one to the Paladin. So we can take 2 cantrips from the Cleric spell list, and those now count as Paladin spells for us. As we have talked about but in the past, the Cleric spell list is pretty fantastic, and the cantrip list is no exception. So things like Toll the Dead show up here. Things like Spare the Dying show up here. Things like Guidance show up here. There are some really, really cool options that you can take as part of this feat. And so this is a fantastic one to think about for sure. We also get Blind Fighting, which of course gives us blind sight out to 10 feet. Defense, which gives us a +1 AC as long as we're wearing armor. Dueling gives us a +2 to our damage rolls as long as we are only holding one weapon in one hand. Great Weapon Fighting allows us to re-roll 1s or 2s whenever we roll damage for a melee attack, as long as we're using 2 hands and the weapon has either the two-handed or versatile property. We have the Interception Fighting style, which is pretty cool here. So whenever a creature is within 5 feet of us and is targeted with an attack, we can reduce the damage equal to 1d10 plus our proficiency bonus, which is not too bad, right? I like that quite a bit. We do have to have either a shield or a weapon in order to use this reaction, but it's not bad. It gives you a reason to stay close to your friends. Protection is basically the same thing as Interception, except that instead of reducing damage, it just imposes disadvantage on the attack roll. And we don't necessarily have to have a weapon in our hand, just a shield is sufficient. So overall, these are some pretty nice options. You know, I've talked about in the past how I don't really like Gray Weapon Fighting, just because overall your damage is going to improve by maybe 1 on average per attack. And so, And even if you re-roll a 1 or a 2, you then have to use the same roll anyway. So it could technically get worse if you go from a 2 to a 1. And that's my luck. So I don't think that's all that great. I probably wouldn't go with that. Even if you're using a two-handed or versatile weapon, I probably wouldn't go with that. Blessed Warrior is pretty fantastic. Blind Fighting is pretty nice. We are going to be a front liner pretty much all the time. And so this is going to be helpful there. Defense, can't go wrong with that. Dueling, if that's the kind of fighting that you're going with, having a shield and a weapon, then dueling is absolutely fantastic. And then Interception and Protection are really cool if you're taking more of the defender kind of stance. I probably would rather go with Protection personally, just because you have a chance of them dealing 0 damage rather than necessarily just having to be able to get rid of the damage by a little bit. Yes, it's a little more versatile on Interception because you just need to have a weapon. You don't necessarily have to have a shield, whereas Protection, you have to have a shield. But honestly, I think that restriction is fine, and I would probably go with Protection over Interception most of the time. With that, I'm going to give this an 8 out of 10. These are some pretty great options, except for Great Weapon Fighting. And so honestly, you can really build around pretty much any of these and be just fine. At level 2, we of course also get spell casting, and we are a half caster. So this is similar to the Artificer, which we've already discussed, and I'll put that up in the iCard above. But so our progression is going at half speed compared to our full casters, things like the Cleric, things like that. And so that's kind of one of the biggest defining features between the Cleric and the Paladin, because we do not get nearly as many spells and we don't get nearly as high level of spells as what the Cleric does. And so that's a big difference, right? Big difference. But of course, we have much more of a martial prowess than the Cleric does on average. And so for that, it kind of balances out in that way. And so with this, of course, we would get up to 5th level spells once we reach level 17, and it will scale from there at half speed from what your normal full casters would be. And of course, we have a dedicated spell list. Now, our spell list for Paladin is very unique as it comes with a lot of smite type spells. Most of them require you to cast it as a bonus action, and then the next attack that hits gets some kind of a bonus. We're not going to go through every one of those today. Those will be what we go over when we're doing build guides, of course, later on. Again, one more reason to subscribe so you don't miss that. But overall, it's a pretty good spell list. We also get things like Find Steed. And that can be really helpful as well, so that we just have a magical horse that can carry us around all the time. And that, of course, can lead into a really cool fighting style as well. And so for all those reasons, it's a great list, but ultimately it is going at half speed compared to your full casters. And so that does knock it back a few notches. So overall, this version of spellcasting is going to get an 8 out of 10. It's still great. We have a lot of awesome spells that can help with our damage, with our versatility, with our healing, things like that. But ultimately, it is slow, and it means that we don't have nearly as many spell slots available to us as what something like a full caster might. Also at level 2, we get Divine Smite, and this is the reason why pretty much everybody loves going with the Paladin. And it's because we can now use spell slots to deal extra damage. So whenever we hit a creature with an attack, we can then choose to expend a spell slot and deal radiant damage in addition to the weapon's damage. So that extra damage is, of course, 2d8 for the first level spell slot, plus 1d8 for every level of spell slot higher than that, up to a maximum of 5d8. The creature also will take an extra d8 if it is an undead or fiend. This, of course, is the bread and butter of paladins, right? You get to choose whether or not you want to use it after you actually make the attack roll. So you're not wasting it like what you would with a key point from the monk, which we just got done talking about. I'll put that up in the icon above as well. This just happens after you know that you've hit and after you're guaranteed that it's going to be put to good use. It also will fall into, you know, that you can use it after you've crit somebody as well. So you can crit and then blow the highest level spell slot that you have available and double that dice, which is absolutely insane. Obviously, Wizards is trying to get rid of this in the new 1D&D type of thing, but as far as 5th edition goes, that's how this works. And so it's an obvious 10 out of 10 for me, because honestly, like, most of the spells that you're going to use are not going to give you as much damage. And even if they do, they don't have the versatility and the ability to be reactive to a great situation like this, right? You can cast that spell, right? You can cast that smite spell. You're now concentrating on that spell, right? You then make your attack, because we don't have extra attack yet, and you miss, right? You're then sitting there concentrating on this spell. You then get hit and drop concentration. You have gotten 0 for that spell slot that you just expended. That feels really bad, right? With this, you just wait and you hear, oh, I hit. Okay, I'm dealing extra damage, guaranteed. That's really where the value of this comes in, and it's really something that can't be downplayed. This is just an amazing thing. At level 3, we get Divine Health, and we become immune to disease. This is more of a ribbon feature overall. I don't see this as being something that's going to come up all that often. So, I see this as like a 5 out of 10. It's fine. Like, it may come up like once in a campaign just to be able to say you have the feature, and then that's about it. So, I don't really care. Also at level 3, of course, we get our subclass, which we will be talking about in the coming weeks. Of course, next week we will be talking about the Oath of the Ancients, and then going on from there in alphabetical order. But one thing I do want to draw your attention to is that each of the oaths actually do give additional spells that will go on the Paladin's list. And each of them also at level 7 come with an additional aura. We have not gotten to any of our auras yet. That will happen at level 6. But at level 7, there is going to be a unique aura to each subclass that each of them get, and they all scale in the same way. Of course, we will talk about each individual one during its respective video, but I just wanted to bring that to your attention. They also get a channel divinity feature here as well, which is unique to each subclass. And of course, those do vary in power depending on which subclass you look at, and we will go into detail on all of those later. So those things will not be factored into our ranking today, but it is something that you can't really ignore that is going to be on every single paladin. Of course, we also at level 3 will get Harness Divine Power, which is the same thing as what the cleric got for an optional Tasha's feature. So we can use a use of our channel divinity, and we can actually get back spell slots, which is pretty good, especially when we're using them for smites. Being able to get those back is pretty handy, and it's a bonus action, right? And so I think that's pretty awesome. I think that can really, really help us out in the long run. And I think it's nice. I think Harness Divine Power is really, really, really good. And so I'm going to give that a 9 out of 10. Getting back spell slots is not only great for versatility, but it's also great for our smites. It helps us get a lot more value out of each of those. Of course, at level 4, we would get an ASI or feat, and that scales the same way as any other class. There are no extra ones like what we talked about with the fighter. We also get martial versatility here, which is not unique to the Paladin, but it allows you to choose a different fighting style at ASI levels, which is fine. I don't think it deserves a ranking necessarily. It's nothing unique. It's nothing crazy. It just allows you to change up your style if you have gotten a new shiny weapon that you want to use and it doesn't work with your old style, or you're just sick of the old one and you want to do something different. It allows you to change that up, which is great. At level 5, we get extra attack. And of course, this is always going to be a 10 out of 10. You get to attack twice instead of once on your attack action, which is always going to be welcome. That's pretty much all there is to it. There's really not a whole lot to talk about with extra attack. So at level 6, we get Aura of Protection, and there is a little bit more to talk about with that. This is where we are introduced to Paladin auras, and they are a very, very crucial and important part of the Paladin kit. With Aura of Protection specifically, we have a 10-foot radius around us in a sphere, and whenever us or a friendly creature must make a saving throw, the creature gets a bonus equal to our Charisma modifier. Now, we do have to be conscious in order to grant this bonus, and then of course the range will increase to 30 feet once we reach level 18. 10-foot radius is pretty limited, but honestly, because we are a frontline fighter, it's not going to be as restrictive as what it sounds. As long as you are aware of this and are nearby your enemies, you're giving them probably a +3, 4, or 5 to a saving throw, which is pretty much as good as advantage once you get up to the top tier of that, which is really, really fantastic. Overall, I mean, Aura of Protection is just an absolutely amazing busted feature, honestly. And then once it gets to 30 feet at level 18, it's absolutely nuts. Obviously, it's really late to be getting something like that, but it's fine. It's fine. Aura of Protection, honestly, is really, really nice. And being able to add that on there is only going to be a good thing. I've got to give this a 9 out of 10. Being able to help with saving throws is going to be crucial, especially if you are in a tight packed space or you're just being a frontliner alongside your fighter, your barbarian, or whoever else is up there with you. At level 10, we get Aura of Courage. So again, a 10-foot radius. We now have immunity to the frightened condition, and we give that to anyone within that aura. Again, we do have to be conscious, and it will go up to 30 feet at level 18. Again, this is really good. The frightened condition can be pretty nasty. It's not the worst condition out there for sure, but it's pretty bad. And so I'm really happy that we can kind of get rid of that pretty easily here. So again, overall, I've got to give this another 8 out of 10. I think it's really, really good. I don't think it's anything broken just because it is a 10-foot radius up until level 18. But until that time, it's still pretty nice. At level 11, we get improved Divine Smite. And so basically we just have a smite built into every single one of our attacks. We deal an extra 1d8 radiant damage every time that we hit a creature with a melee attack. Free damage all the time, unlimited number of times. There's no proficiency bonus times per day. There's no, you have to hit with a hunter's mark or a hex. There's none of that. It's just free. It's free. And so, yeah, it's only a d8, but like that adds up a lot. See, now we're making 2 attacks per turn. Plus we can smite on top of that. Plus we can cast other spells. Plus we can do all kinds of things. Yeah, 1d8 can really go a long way. And so I'm going to give this a 9 out of 10. I think it's great. I think the damage is really nice. It's a freebie. So I don't know how I could find anything wrong with this. Finally, level 14, we get Cleansing Touch. And I know it's weird to say finally at level 14, but I mean, there's not really anything else to talk about, because if it's not one of these levels, we're getting one of just a handful of things for every other level. It's either a subclass feature, nothing, which there are a few levels of nothing, but usually those are levels where you're getting a new level of spell slot. It might be an improvement to a previous feature, or it could just be an ASI. And so all of those things can just fill up the rest of our levels. So there's really not a ton going on with the individual class. A lot of it rides on the subclass, which is not terribly unexpected, but it is still something to think about. So at level 14 with Cleansing Touch, we can end one spell on ourselves with an action, which is kind of nuts, honestly. It can either be us or a willing creature, which can be insane. So that can be like the slow spell, which you could get rid of if somebody's affecting you with that. It could be fairy fire. It could be a number of things where if you were to fail the saving throw, even though you have your aura, if you were to fail the saving throw, you just get rid of it anyway if it's not something that's instantaneous. So that's also really good. And we can do this a number of times per day equal to our charisma modifier, which hopefully is 5 by this point, which is just insane. It's so good. It's so good. This is a 10 out of 10. Cleansing Touch is absolutely fantastic. Being able to get rid of any kind of lasting effect on yourself or your friends, as long as they're willing, it's just absolutely fantastic. I can't look down on this feature at all. So what do we think of the Paladin overall? This is obviously a very, very strong class, right? And with each subclass, it obviously goes up from here most of the time. Obviously, there are some subclasses better than others, and we'll be talking about that in the coming weeks. But with what we are presented here, we've got a really solid chassis to go off of and to branch off into each of the subclasses, right? We start off with a great foundation with a great hit die pool. We start off with great armor proficiency, weapon proficiencies. Divine Sense allows us to see some things around us and not necessarily be snuck up on, or have something that is around you that may pose a danger to you. Lay on Hands is one of the best ways to heal in the game, which is fantastic. You got great fighting styles. Our spell casting combined with our Divine Smite is absolutely nuts. And then, of course, it just goes up from there. We get extra attack. We get our auras, which are absolutely amazing. And then we just deal extra damage for free and then just can end spells on ourselves. All of these things result in an absolutely fantastic base for pretty much anything that you could want to do. And so for that, I've got to give this a 10 out of 10. It is up there with the Bard. It is up there with everything else. Yes, not necessarily every single feature is a 10 out of 10, but the culmination of all of them, and once you consider that there will be some subclasses that are added onto each of these, overall, it's going to be an average of 10 out of 10. And I really can't go lower than that. I've heard people that say that they think it's worse than the Bard. I do think that this is as good, but for different reasons. The Bard is obviously the jack of all trades, for lack of a better term, right? It is the thing that can do everything. This is one that can do almost everything, but is a little bit more specialized. And so it's a little bit better at several things than the Bard would be. And so you've got damage dealing. This is going to be better than the Bard most of the time, pretty much all the time. You've got healing, which this is probably going to be better than the Bard at in a lot of situations, especially with Lay on Hands. As far as like utility goes, yeah, the Bard's probably going to win out. And as far as like battlefield control, the Bard will probably win out. So they're both really good for different reasons. And so for that, I think I can put both of them comfortably in that ranking. So what do you think? Did I go a little too far with this? Is this too high for Paladin? I don't think so. I think it's really, really good. I think it's one of, if not the best class in the game. And I think that everybody should have an opportunity to try to play one of these at some point. Well, next week, we are starting off our subclass series, looking at the Oath of the Ancients and moving on from there. Make sure that you're subscribed so you don't miss that. And until then, stay safe out there, stay healthy. We'll see you later. Bye-bye.